Hello and welcome to part 13 of this Tableau Made Easy series, and this is going to be great as we'll be moving one step closer to completing our amazing dashboard for our client. Here we are going to be creating a list of the top 10 earthquakes in terms of magnitude by day. And before we get on to that, the very first thing that I want to do is probably something that we should have done from the very start, but that is to name our worksheets. This is definitely best practice to ensure that we know what is where, but it also comes in handy when creating our dashboard, as by default, our dashboard will want to use these names as the titles for each section. So down the bottom of screen here, let's click onto sheet 1. And this is our map. So to rename this, let's right click on the sheet 1 tab and then rename. And I'm going to call this earthquake map. Let's click onto sheet 2. And this was our 3 charts by location. So let's rename that as well. So down here on sheet 2, right click and rename. And for this one, I don't know, let's just call this location chart triple. We can always change this on our final dashboard, but at least this will be clear to us as to what it is. And then for sheet 3, we don't actually need this for our dashboard requirements, but let's keep it anyway for reference so we can always remember how we made these calculated fields. So let's rename that also. And I'm just going to call this calculated fields play. Awesome. So with that housekeeping done, let's get on to this top 10 list that we need. For this, let's create ourselves a new worksheet. So let's click on that new worksheet button down the bottom, and let's make sure we rename this one too. So instead of sheet 4, let's call this top 10 largest earthquakes. And once we've done that, let's build out what we need. And now that you're a bit more comfortable here in Tableau, we can probably move a bit faster than we did in the last tutorials. So let's start by dragging our ID variable onto the rows section of our view. And then let's drag magnitude onto the values section. And once we've done that, let's sort this table in descending order. And we can do this using this button up on the top. So we have 2 sort buttons up the top here. We have this one here on the left for ascending order, and then we have this one on the right for descending order. So once we click on this one here, we can see that our table is now sorted in the order of descending magnitude, with our largest earthquake at the top there. Now, our requirement for our dashboard is a list of the top 10 earthquakes. So to limit the number of rows that we get returned here for magnitude, which is a measure rather than a dimension, we need to make use of a calculated field that tells this table to only show us the top 10 rows. So let's do that now. Let's right click and then create calculated field. Let's give this a name. So I think we can call this top 10 filter. And then in the logic box here, let's put the following. Let's put index, and I just auto-completed there, and you can see that has parentheses after it. Let's put a space, and then less than or equal to 10. So index is what is known as a table calculation, and it essentially returns the row number. So with what we have here, this will be a Boolean or true-false variable that will differentiate between rows that are in the top 10 versus those that are not. So let's click OK to create that field. And now we have it. Let's drag this up onto our filters shelf. Now we only want the top 10 rows for our table. That is the requirement from our client. So let's pre-specify that we only want rows where this filter is true. So let's check that true checkbox there, and then let's hit OK. And perfect, that is exactly what we want. Now, you'll notice that in our table, we have the earthquake ID and we have the magnitude. But what might make this even more intuitive for our client would be if we had location in there too. This would mean that they could more easily tie up what they're seeing in this table and what is happening on the map, for example. So over on the left, let's get our location variable here. And let's drag that up into this rows section here. And let's do that over on the right-hand side of ID. Cool, I think that looks great. Now, Tableau does something a little bit interesting with tables like this. We can see that both ID and location both have their names at the top of the table, but our magnitude column, that is blank. It doesn't have a column header. To fix this, over on the left here at the bottom of our dimensions, let's drag measure names over onto our table. And if I expand this column a little bit here, we can see that we now have the column name, but we actually have it twice. So right up the top here in our columns shelf, let's remove one of those. So let's grab that and drag that away. And perfect, this is looking really good. Let's just make sure that we return our magnitude values to be a whole number. They had some decimal places adding during that last bit of action. So under our marks card in the measure values, let's click the drop down and then format. And then in here, let's click onto numbers, number custom, and let's bring that back to 0 decimal places. Awesome, so let's close our filter options here by hitting the small cross at the top right. And then let's add the one remaining part of this that we need, which is to ensure that we can filter this all by date. So like we've done several times before, let's go up and grab our date time variable, and let's drag that onto our filters shelf. And we are again going to select month, day, year, and then next. We want all dates, so let's select all and then OK. Let's just make sure that we can see our filter. So let's go up to the filters shelf. Let's click the drop down and show filter. And just because I think it looks nicer, let's go over to the right and change this to be a single value slider. Like I say, we don't have to do this, but it just makes it much easier to toggle through day by day. So as you can see, it starts on the 11th of July and our table is showing the top 10 earthquakes for that date. If we scroll one to the left, we can see all earthquakes, so no date filter is being applied. So in our table, we have the top 10 earthquakes overall. If we scroll to the right, we can of course see day by day the top 10 earthquakes that took place. So well done. That is all we need for this requirement. In the next video, let's go and tick off another thing on our to-do list, which will be a table showing each of the location broad categories and the percentage of earthquakes that took place within each, again by day. This will be really interesting to work on, and I'm looking forward to running through it and creating it with you. Let's not forget to save our workbook, so File, Save to Tableau Public, and as always, I will see you in the next video.